with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn things over to Michael. So thank you for being here, Michael, and I'll let you introduce the program and take it away.
Cool. Great. Thank you, Jay, and all of the translators and the captioners and Emily and everyone else that's helping. Let me share my screen. And there we go. Looking good. Everyone see that? All right. So my name is Michael Coffey, and I have Ardea Coaching. I do coaching for small businesses, mostly around online marketing, that sort of thing. But I do other stuff as well because, small business owners wear a lot of hats. And so I am there to help them with whatever hat they happen to be wearing. I have worked with um, a lot of different groups, the Washington Women's Business Center, um, Seattle Central College, and one of the things that comes up over and over again is, how do you make decisions? That that's kind of a basic thing that is different for business owners in many ways than for regular, run-of-the-mill citizens. And in particular, business owners now have access to way more information than they used to. I I remember growing up, like going to the library was something you saved up for. Not saved up for, but I have 10 things I need to look up the next time I get to the library, because there wasn't an internet. Well, there wasn't the web. And so, you didn't have the world at your fingertips at a computer. Now you do. And the library has all kinds of stuff that you don't necessarily have access to on your computer. So there's lots of data out there, and that requires a little bit of a shift in your mind. So, but that can be scary, no doubt. And we'll talk about that in about 2 slides. But so I'm going to throw around terms like data science and data analysis and things like that, but it's really just thinking. I've mentioned entrepreneurs. This applies to nonprofits as well. So if you're trying to run some organization that doesn't fit perfectly with entrepreneur or small business, this all works for you as well. We're going to look at three main scenarios, if you will. One will be about collecting data. What information do you already have? One will be about marketing, and one will be about money, because those are kind of the 3 big things that all organizations have to deal with. All right, so that's what we're going to talk about today. And if I actually select there, so here's sort of that same overview. We'll first talk about what is data as a broad idea, and then you may have heard the term big data, so that's a little bit more specific, and then we'll get into the scenario of collecting the data, and that will just sort of get us accustomed to talking about these ideas. And then, of course, we'll talk about the marketing and the making money and some Q&A. Now, you can interrupt throughout this whole thing. You can take yourself off mute and ask a question. You can put something in the chat, as Jay said earlier, and Jay will interrupt me on behalf of you. And I have a couple of places where I'll just stop and ask for questions throughout. But I want this to be useful for you, and different people have different questions about data and about thinking. So yeah, so do, get the information that you want. Interrupt me, that's great. So without further ado, let's address, here's 2 slides later. Um, let's address the fact that if you are watching this, there's about a 50% chance that math freaks you out. Um, I am I'm a part-time adjunct instructor for a high school here in Seattle. So I teach math a couple times a week, and math anxiety is a real thing. So it's okay. It's gonna be okay. Um, it, and math is a weird thing. There's no doubt about it. And our education system about math is weird. For example, most US adults can do 6th grade math. In order to be a certified teacher, you have to be able to do 8th grade math. And then you have to do 12th grade math in order to graduate from high school. So you actually have to know more math to graduate from high school than to teach high school, which is weird. So, the fact that people have issues around math, not surprising at all. But don't let the math anxiety get in the way. We're not going to do any calculations in this class. We will talk about numbers though. So I just don't want to trigger anyone. So there we go. Now, it is useful to get good at math and to get comfortable with looking at the numbers and understanding the relationships between them. I had, well, it wasn't my client. It was someone that I worked with who had a client who came in with their financial documents, and they said, we keep getting, more and more business. Everything is sort of looking good, but there's no money. Like, we keep running out of money, even though our sales are good. And so the other counselor, looked through their financial statements and was like, well, have you reviewed these? And the client said, no, I just, my accountant gives them to me, and I just stick them in a drawer because, that's the accountant's job, is to worry about this stuff. And the counselor was okay, great, looking at this and looking at these numbers, and said, okay, so what licensing things does your business have? And the client was like, just a regular, City of Seattle business license and a Washington State business license. And that started the series of additional questions, because the cost for licenses on that statement was 100 times the cost of the Washington State and the City of Seattle business licenses. Turns out the accountant that this client was trusting had actually been arrested for embezzlement before. Uh, and so, sort of knowing what your numbers should be and how they relate to each other will help you avoid someone taking advantage of you. So it's really important to have at least some level of comfort with looking at your own numbers. Okay? Just your warning. So now we get into the good stuff. What is data? Data is just a piece of information. It's a fact. It's a number. It's a measurement. How long is that pencil? That's a piece of data. um, your list of customers, who has purchased from you? That's data. What items sold yesterday? That's data. Your social media account, like how many followers do you have? Your bank statement is a bunch of data on a piece of paper, or however you get your bank statements. When was the last time you visited the library? That's a piece of data. So data is not really a scary thing in and of itself. We deal with it all the time. How fast are you driving, right? Your speedometer is data. Um, so your business, you're already sifting through data all the time. You are doing informal data science when you run your business, when you look at your books, when you look at your inventory, when you order things like, how many of item A do we need? How many of item B do we need? That's all data. What we're going to talk about here today is being intentional about collecting the information that you need, and using it well to make decisions. Because it's easy to just be like, okay, well, yeah, I got a gut feeling, I'm just gonna wing it. You can do that, but you will get, in general, on average, better results if you're a little bit more focused than that. All right. Well, then I will continue. And if you had a question and were shy, remember, we're going to turn off the recording at the end and you can ask then.
There is a question.
Oh, okay.
How do
Great.
we
I'm glad I
decide?
delayed.
Yeah, thank you. How do we decide which data to collect?
Yeah. We'll kind of talk about that. But the simple answer is, what uh what piece of information would help you make the next important decision? So every business is going to have different questions that need to be answered, different decisions to be made. And so the right data to collect, oftentimes when we feel stuck or unsure or stressed out, it's because there's something that we need to know that we don't know. And often we don't think about that. Like what would make this easy? Oh, well, if I only knew who was, our likely customer, if I knew that, then this would be an easy question. And so taking a moment for yourself to ask that question, like what information would make this easy or easier, that's usually a good guide to what should you be collecting. But we'll talk a little bit more about that in just a bit. Okay, I'm going to move on. So now that we know what data is, what is big data? You may have heard this, on the news or in conversations or whatever. What is big data? Well, big data typically is just data that has some aspect of it that makes it overwhelming, we'll say. That's what that's where the big is. It's like too much. And oftentimes people will talk about the 3 V's of big data. So that is a set of data, a data set, a group of information, a type of information that has one of these 3 characteristics. The first one is volume. So, um, so volume just means that there's so much information that trying to find what you need is like a needle in a haystack. So for instance, if you are looking at, Twitter's been in the news. If you're looking at all of the tweets that were posted yesterday, right? Gajillions of them. I don't know how many tweets are posted in a day, but there's a lot. Right? And finding some sort of pattern in that is going to be daunting. It's going to be overwhelming. Okay, so that's volume. Another example might be all of the orders that were placed through Amazon yesterday. All right, that's another one that's going to just be like, whew, don't print that out because you're going to run out of paper. Just there's a lot. Okay, so that's the first V. Second of the 3 V's is velocity. So this doesn't necessarily need to be a lot of data, but it is data in motion. So it's either coming in quickly or it's moving quickly. So this might be things like managing streaming video, right? If you're YouTube or Netflix or any of the streaming services, you're dealing with velocity data. You're dealing with, okay, is everyone getting the right level of resolution for their screens, and is it going out at the right rate so that it's not skipping and all of that. Real-time analysis. So we just had an election and all of the votes and where's this coming from and who's analyzing it, and you're trying to analyze what we already know while more stuff is coming in and changing the stuff that you're trying to look at, right? That's velocity. The third V is variety. So variety is when there's lots of different types of data. Social media is a variety problem. So there's video, there's text, there's audio, there's still images. It can also be data that isn't well structured. So if you did a survey and you just left space for people to write stuff, well, how do you analyze that? It's just a bunch of people saying a bunch of things. So rather than checking boxes, which are easy to say, okay, 3 people chose option A and 10 people chose option B, together. When some people just write 1 word and other people write 3 paragraphs, and what is their point, and did they really answer the question? And okay, so that's variety. Oops, the fourth of the 3 V's is value. So, and this kind of gets at that question from earlier. Value for big data is you might have a lot of information and not know if it's good for something. You might have to sift through a lot of data to find something useful to you. It might be incredibly useful once you find it. but the value might be little nuggets of gold in a lot of, sand or whatever. I haven't ever panned for gold, so so one of the things that data scientists do is what's called exploratory analysis. And that is where you take a data set and you kind of look at it from a lot of different perspectives to get a sense of, is there something useful here? Is there something that we can glean? And sometimes there's not. But sometimes it's like, oh, wait a minute. Maybe if we take this thing and we put it together with this thing, we'll get some sort of insight that we can act on. So that's the fourth of the 3 V's. Oops. five V's. Veracity. So this word just means truth, but it starts with a V. So sometimes you have information that you don't know how trustworthy it is. You don't know how accurate it is. So for instance, maybe you heard that there were 3 V's of big data, but then here's a list of 5. Like, where does that confusion come from? Can I trust Michael? Or is it just that different people have different opinions? Um, are you certain that it's accurate? Does it need to be cleaned up? There's a thing called data hygiene where, stuff, some fields are missing or has, the file got corrupted and so you lost some of the numbers and you need to clean that up. That's part of veracity as well, so that the stuff you're looking for you can trust. And so that can be overwhelming as well. I will also say I've seen 2 more V's, but I'm not going to get into that. Variability and visualization, but you get the idea. So that's what big data is. Big data is just a pile of information that has one of these features, one of these characteristics that make it a little bit difficult to go through just kind of by hand or eyeballing it. All right. So another opportunity to ask questions. We've got data and now we've got big data.
Okay, no questions, looks like.
Great. On we go. Collecting data. So this is our first, it's not really a scenario. Well, yeah, it can be a scenario. The first view of using data to think about things. Let's say that you have a business manufacturing widgets, some whatever item that you're making. So you're cranking out some manufacturing thing and you're selling it. What information might you have? Think about that for a moment. What kinds of data might you already have access to? I have a list on the next slide, but think about your own organization, your own business. Or what have you already drawn on in order to make decisions? Okay, so with a couple of things in mind, here's what I brainstormed. I'm not going to read all of these, but customer list, the number of sales per item, your tax returns, phone logs, your purchase orders, what coupons got redeemed, um, who has referred business to you. There's two on the lower right that I think are worth looking at. It's the two with quotation marks. The I've noticed. So sometimes your customers or your employees will say something and they're not making a suggestion or asking a question. It's just in passing. They'll say, oh, you know what? I've noticed that sometimes that can be really useful. That can be a suggestion of a place where you can look for information. Oh, is there a pattern there that I'm unaware of? That'd be interesting. That might be useful. And the last one, people have said, sometimes you get feedback or information not directly but indirectly. So people have said that our company has a reputation for something. Okay, well that's good to know. If it's a good reputation, well, maybe we can work that into our marketing. If it's a not so good reputation, maybe it's something that you can look at improving. And that suggests specific data you can collect. If you think it's something that you'd like to improve, you can start measuring whatever that is. Customer satisfaction, on-time deliveries, whatever is relevant to your business. Okay, you can choose to start tracking information that is going to help you.
There's a good one that came in the chat too. Number of widgets to manufacture per year.
Oh yeah. Like forecasting.
Yeah.
Yeah, because in order to do that forecast, you're also going to have to draw on, well, how many did we manufacture? You're going to have to draw on how many did we sell? How much do we have in the warehouse? Do we get a price break on the cost of the materials at a certain level? What is the capacity of our warehouse? Can we make that many and store them somewhere? Right? Like all of that is data. And making a good decision about what you're going to do requires you to collect that. Okay. Oh, nope. Oh, I guess I am going to go on to that one. So that was the first idea. Okay. So what data do you already have and what might you want to collect? Again, your business is going to be different from everyone else's, but it gives you a place to start thinking about what should I collect? What should I be paying attention to? What decisions do I have to make? And what information do I need in order to make those decisions? So you can start collecting it now so that when you need to make the decision, you have it. I will throw in here a tool that I like using. It's called Obsidian. It's a note-taking tool. There are hundreds of videos on YouTube about how to use it. It's a very simple digital note-taking thing. that you can. I have started using it more and more recently and really like it. Um, for sort of those miscellaneous, I need to keep this bit of information somewhere. But of course, you have accounting programs to keep track of all your financial data. Um, like there are specialized software for all kinds of types of information. If you have sort of a medical um, business, medical related business, there's medical billing software, there's software for uh, dealing with a fleet of delivery vehicles. There's software for all kinds of stuff, tracking manufacturing stages. But Obsidian is a nice, lightweight, kind of just like those personal size, little, I don't know where this goes yet kinds of information, if you're looking for that. Also, what works is, like a little journal, but have somewhere to put the information when you find it. Okay, so marketing is the next view, or the next idea, the next viewport, scenario. So I'm using here a screenshot that I found from 2014, because the actual information isn't important. This is just, again, some data. It's stale now, stale data. Um, two of these don't exist anymore, for example. Um, so, but it's marketing data. You could go out and find a chart like this that's up to date. Okay. What would you do with it? What questions could you answer? All right. Shy, that's fine. Here's my thoughts.
There's one
Oh,
that just
oh,
popped in,
ooh, ooh, ooh.
where you should market.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Where should I choose any of these social media sites, to use that last one? Um, yeah. So what kinds of other decisions could you use data with regard to marketing? Um, well, this is data that might help you choose. So these aren't the decisions, but these are the the sources of data. Um, who are your social media followers? Who subscribes to your blog? Um, what are the posts, whether blog or social media or whatever, that get the most traffic, that get the most likes? Um, who are rivals that you might poach followers from? uh, Obviously not literally poaching, but the like it is really common, as a marketing strategy, to find other people that are doing things that are similar to you. So you think that their followers might be good followers for you, and find some way to encourage them to follow you also. It can be cooperative. It doesn't have to be adversarial. um you could do a takeover where uh you know you take over their account for an afternoon, or you do a Q&A with them, or something like that, so that you share each other's followers, you introduce each other. um
And here's another one. Which social media are targeting my niche more? Another
Yes,
discussion. Yeah.
absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Knowing where your preferred audience exists is a super useful piece of information. And Jay, at the end, mosaics is probably a good thing to say again. Yeah. Um, there's a couple of tools that the library has that is just like, okay, yeah, every class we do, we're going to talk about this because it's just so good for so many different situations. And you as an individual don't have access to this information, but through the library you do. So it's worth hundreds of dollars, thousands of dollars, perhaps, to your business to just get a library card. um, do it. Um, and I'm not just saying that because I'm doing a class with the library. Like, I really believe that. Like, I tell people in other classes to get a library card. Um, Yeah, so you can find industry trends, you can find economic trends, you can have, you can find interviews with successful people in your field, which might reveal how they solved a problem that you are currently having. Um, yeah, so lots of stuff there. So I'm going to take a pause, see if there's any additional information, because I just saw the little bubble on the chat number go up. So any
Mostly me putting,
questions?
mostly me putting in the link to the
Uh,
where the demographics now lives on the site.
okay.
So we'll talk more about it a little bit later. So
Okay. So just everyone grab that link. All right. So that's sort of how marketing, um, where data is going to feed into your decision making. Where should I market? To whom should I market? Where do those people live? What social media sites do they use? Where do they get their news? All of that kind of information is all data. And you might have noticed sneakily, one source of data is the library. So, yeah, that's really what libraries are. People think of them as collections of books, but they're really collections of data because books are just data in solid form. Um, okay, on we go. Let's make some money. We've answered some questions. We've started collecting some more data. We've dealt with the fact that we might feel a little overwhelmed sometimes, but that's just how data is sometimes. We're ready to market. Now let's make some money. We want that line to go up, right? Up and up and up. This is the most, it's content warning. We're going to look at some numbers, some real numbers, and we're going to think about them. Okay, so I softened you up a little bit with no numbers, but now we're going to look at some numbers. So what you are about to see is two financial statements from an example that I used to use at the Washington Women's Business Center when I was a counselor there. It's a fake company, and it's an income statement, which is one of the two primary financial statements that a business has. The other is balance sheet, which is the other one. And it's 3 years of each on one screen, 3 years of income statement on one screen, 3 years of balance sheet on the other screen. And what I'm going to do is just show you the income statement and see if you notice things. I want you to look at the numbers. Here we go. I want you to look at the numbers and see if you notice anything. What can you tell about what's going on at this company just with this data. And there's some questions at the bottom that you can use to guide your attention if you wish. If you have not seen these, I will briefly say that sales is just the total amount that you brought in. COGS stands for cost of goods sold. That's what it cost you to make or do the thing that you sold. Operating expenses are other expenses like keeping the lights on, your utility bills, right? You didn't make a widget with that electricity. It's just an additional expense. Operating profit is when you subtract those things from sales. Interest expense is when you have to pay interest on a loan. And then you have the income before taxes, and then net income is what you have after you've paid taxes. Okay, so look at these, see what you notice.
Sales going down.
Sales going down.
Net
Yeah.
income decline.
What was that?
Net income decline.
Which makes sense if you're making less sales each year.
Yep.
Yeah.
Interest expense increases each year.
Yeah. So when does your interest go, your interest payments go up? They go up when you take out a loan, right? When you borrow, your interest payments increase. So that particular line, that the interest expense is going up in a fairly noticeable amount and sales are going down, suggests that it isn't all fun and games at Gizmo Manufacturing.
And COGS is really high.
Yeah. Yeah.
Look at how it's this, like, pretty almost the same. 242, 242, 500, and then there's this jump to 253. So I think that's
Although as a percentage, you can see that it's like 52%, 53%,
yeah,
54%.
it's still
So like
gradual.
it is, the prices are rising year after year,
Mm-hmm.
right? But their sales are going down, which means that there's that profit is getting squeezed year after year after year. And then they're borrowing and interest is, right?
Yeah,
So yeah, it's not a good, well, and look at net income at the bottom,
yeah.
right? It was 11% of sales is how much they had left over, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And then 8.5% and then 8.1%. So there was something in this 2009, 2010 that was kind of probably the big thing that happened here. Right? Because 2010 to 2011 isn't as big
Yeah.
a difference. Likewise, the interest expense changed the most between 2009, 2010. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, and then there's another comment, half of sales too.
Half of sales.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So they don't have much of a margin. It costs them half of the cost of something to make that thing. And then it's getting squeezed with interest. Okay. I mean, they're still making a profit, but it's pretty small. This is looking kind of like almost like what a grocery store makes, which is rather than sort of a manufacturer. Okay, so great. That's the income statements. This is kind of the change over time statement. Let's look at balance sheet. So balance sheet is like a snapshot at the end of the year about like how much is in this account, how much is in that account. It's like your bank statement. Your bank statement is or at least the total per account is like your balance sheet. And it's divided into 3 sections. If you haven't seen one, if you already know this, I'm sorry, brief brief overview. It's divided into 3 sections: assets, which are the stuff that your business has. It's got liabilities and owner's equity. So liabilities are things that you owe to other people, and owner's equity is what's left over that you have to owe. So the assets are the stuff that is owned, and the liabilities and owner's equity are who owns it. It's basically how that. And if that was a useful idea for you, check out the book, The Accounting Game. Orloff, I think, is the author. It's called The Accounting Game. It uses the idea of running a lemonade stand to explain accounting. So anyway, here is the balance sheet for Gizmo Manufacturing Company, 3 different years. What do you notice here? I will point out, since we noticed that the interest expense was going up, that we can look down here to total liabilities. And we noticed that it was 187,000, and then 239,000, and then 266,000. So they are borrowing more every single year. Their total debt is going up, even though they are spending more on interest.
And there's a comment that cash is very low.
Cash is very low. Yeah. Yeah. They're running out of money.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that doesn't look good. What are some other things? Oh, so here's an interesting thing. Inventory. Inventory was worth 42,000, and then it went up to 58,000 and then dropped back down again. To me, what that says, and with the debt, right? It went from like 70,000 to 110, 112,000. And inventory went up. What that says to me is it seems like they were getting ready to do something big, like getting ready to expand or build a new plant or something, and it fell through. It's kind of what it feels like to me. Their sales dropped rather than going up, which was what they expected, maybe. I don't know.
Another comment, other assets going up.
Other assets going up, that
new equipment. Yeah.
Yeah. So other assets, that could be, new equipment or something like that. Yeah, absolutely.
And another one, they are making enough to break even, though, looks like.
True.
Yeah.
True. Yeah, so they're not going in a great direction, but it's possible that they can turn this around. Right? This is over 3 years that this trend is happening. So it's not like an immediate crisis. But it doesn't seem like an easy time to be in charge of Gizmo Manufacturing Company. There are some definite challenges happening here. So Other thoughts? I think I have one more. Yeah, I'm kind of bringing it around to a conclusion here. We have almost half an hour. So here's my summary. So thinking with data is just bringing two things together and seeing where they overlap or where they rub. The information that you have or that you can get, and what you need to know to make a better decision. Your gut feeling is great in the absence of information. But oftentimes we go and we get information and we realize that what I thought was happening wasn't quite the full story. Or, oh, I was wrong about that. Or maybe, yes, I was right about that, but now I have data to prove it. Right? Like those are your basically three scenarios, but you don't know which scenario it is until you go get the data. And it is better to make an informed decision than an uninformed decision. Okay. So I am going to thank the places that I got images and a formal thank you here. And then open it up to questions that might still be, or ideas or thoughts from the people that are currently online and wanting to ask that live. And then Jay can talk a little bit about resources from the library, and then we can still have a little bit of time left over for Q&A for the shy people. So any questions? And I can go back to the, like, if there's some, if you want to look at the financials some more, I can do that. But
Questions that you'd like to ask? Here's one. How about if you are considering startup and want to do research on competition? Well, I'll take that one.
yeah, I just wasn't going to say anything.
Yeah, we can help with competition research also. So different tools that we usually there's different tools that we would use than for researching customers. But I try to think about three kinds of business information. There are more than three kinds, but I try to break them down into three kinds. Who's my customer? That'd be usually about demographics now, like I'll tell you a little bit more about. Who's my competition? Lists of companies, like what other pet stores are in West Seattle, because I'm thinking about putting my pet store there, those kind of things. And then market trends. And so market trends, some examples might be like, what's the size of the market? Or like we talked about earlier, forecast, like what would be, we talked about a forecast that an individual business might have, how many widgets might I be able to make per year. But we could also look at like industry-wide forecasts. How many widgets are expected to sell, in a certain year, or how many sold over the last, couple years, and then they're forecasting how much that is. So yeah, we can help with that kind of stuff too.
Well, and sort of related to that is also the question of like the average household spends this much in that category, which is kind of a different facet of the same idea.
Yes,
right?
Definitely. Yeah, like how much money do households in West Seattle spend on their pets per household, like on average, like those kind of data sets.
Right.
And we can answer that question. We have tools that will tell you that kind of stuff, or like how much money do people spend on cheese in in Capitol Hill. You know, people who live in Capitol Hill, how much do they spend on cheese? Those kind of things. And then the ones Michael was mentioning earlier are the mosaics. That's
Oh yeah.
those are these lifestyle segments that a company called Experion has created, and so they really give us lifestyles of people who live in a particular area. And you know, they're generalizations, but they get fairly, you know, right down into like these, you know, this group, and then how much, what kind of social media do they consume, what kind of like, is social media actually the best way to reach them, or is it, you know, is it for some
Podcasts.
it's podcasts, or video, or uh, snail mail, even, you know, like those kind of things. And we see those, and it rates their channel preference there for each of those, and then it goes into like a lot of detail, and then even just like a short little essay about what they like and what they don't like and things. So it can be very, very useful, because we can actually look at a particular area and then say, wow, there's these four groups that tend to be the age of the people that I expect will buy my stuff. And then we can, you know, start to like actually get data that can help you make a decision about how to market to them, yeah, and where to market to them too.
When I was teaching, well, mostly when I was teaching at Seattle Central, um, one of the things that I would give my marketing students to do is I would give them, you know, some demographic uh, category and say, okay, well, how many people are there like this? You know, how many Asian women between the ages of 55 and 65 are there in Seattle, roughly? You know, because you're going to want to have that skill to be able to go out and find that kind of thing.
And demographics now can answer those kind of questions.
Yep.
Oh, and then the other thing is, don't feel like you have to go that alone. Like that's
Oh yeah.
that kind of thing, that kind of research. Yeah, we're providing you the tools, but each of those interfaces, if you look at that big list of them, each of those interfaces is different, and you know, the things you want from it are probably going to be different from everybody else on this call. Like each of you have probably some unique things that you're looking for. So because of that, we have 7 librarians who are trained in this kind of research and trained in using these tools. And so you can sign up for 1-hour sessions with us, and we'll help you through those. So I'm going to put the link in the chat, but there's this list of appointments, upcoming appointments. Just look for one that says business information appointment, and those are the ones that are one-on-ones with librarians. You're also going to see in there some other interesting things: personal credit consultations. So this afternoon, I spent quite a bit of time with Tiara Bonds, who's a credit coach, and she was helping people figure out how to improve their credit scores, you know, through these. This is a new program that we're trying out, and it's going really, really well. I'm really, really amazed at what Tiara can do to help people improve their credit scores.
And I'll say, since we were talking about interest expense being a thing, your credit score as an individual can really impact how much your business has to pay in interest if you get a business loan.
Exactly. Yeah. So Tiara can help you hack your credit score so that it's higher, so you can get that better rate, you know, before. So there's consultations, which is one-on-one, you and Tiara and myself, and sometimes my colleague Elizabeth is, you know, part of those. We're just there to help take notes so we can send those to you afterwards. So you could sign up for those. Tiara is also teaching 2 more workshops. One which are coming up, one next week, and then one's the week following that. So sign up for those 2, and even if you don't, even if you can't attend, sign up for those anyway, because that just gives me your email address, and it prompts me to send you the recording. I've been behind on getting these recordings up, and out there, but I have. The good news is I've been doing it in the background, and so you're going to get a whole bunch of those recordings if you sign up. I'll have a whole list of them, and you can just click on them, as you like, including this one. And I'll put the class info of where you can sign up in the chat also. So sign up for those one-on-ones with Tiara, with librarians. We also have some with attorneys, so you can sign up and talk to a corporate law expert, or I think the intellectual property ones are all booked, but we'll have more of those in the new year too. So those are other ones coming up too. Yeah, I'm going to put the links in the chat there, and I'll open it up to if there's other questions too.
Yeah, I can field the questions while I got the chat open now, so I can see it. I don't need to see which slide I'm on anymore. Any other questions for the bolds that are willing to be recorded?
Yeah, Tuesday, November 22nd at noon is that personal credit 202, and just click on that link, and you can sign up for it. We also have, well, here's another data thing too. On Monday, we have developing a cash flow, which is kind of what some of these things we were talking about, like how to do that using Google Sheets. So Andrew Powers is going to show us, he's going to teach us 2 things: how to use Google Sheets, and you don't need to know how, because he's going to show you how, and then also what a cash flow is, and how to develop one using that tool. So it's going to be fun.
That's the other financial document that I always worked with people with too. So that's like the third of the 3 financial documents. So that's really useful.